Assalamu alaikum. Today on Nurin Academy, we discuss the principles of ethical enterprise in Islam. If you benefit, please support by subscribing and sharing as a sadaqah. To really explore what this means in practice, we're going to follow a timeless story, a parable really, about a weaver named Maryam. She truly believed that fairness is woven directly into the very fabric of our faith. So let's begin her story.
So here's the path we're going to walk with her today. We'll look at the 5 key lessons from her journey. We're going to start with the foundation of her craft, then face the tough moral questions of the marketplace. After that, we'll uncover a deeper meaning of success, see leadership as a sacred duty, and finally, we'll witness the ultimate test of her conscience.
All right, so let's start where all good and true work begins, with honesty. You see, for Maryam, her craft wasn't just about making something beautiful. It was a real, tangible expression of her sincerity and her devotion. This right here was a profound lesson Maryam learned from her teacher. Think about it. In a world that's always telling us faster is better, do more quicker, Islamic tradition teaches a totally different kind of wisdom. It says that any gain you think you're making from a rushed, dishonest process is, in reality, a loss, both spiritually and in the long run. The integrity of the work itself is what truly matters.
And this wasn't just some nice idea for her. You could see it in everything she did at the workshop. She was taught a whole mindset. Spinning thread slowly wasn't about being inefficient, it was about creating something strong. Preparing dyes patiently, that was to ensure a vibrant, lasting quality. And rejecting weak fabric wasn't about being wasteful, it was a deep commitment to excellence. For her, the process itself was an act of worship.
Of course, a foundation of honesty like that is bound to be tested. And as Maryam's business started to grow, she came face to face with the dilemma that is so incredibly relevant today, the temptation of the shortcut.
And this, right here, is the central moral question of her entire story. You know, when a product gets cheaper, that cost doesn't just vanish into thin air. It gets shifted. Somebody, somewhere, ends up paying that hidden price. Islamic ethics forces us to look past the price tag and ask, who's really bearing that burden? Is it the worker? Is it the environment? Or is it the customer, who gets a product that just won't last?
So here's the choice she was facing, laid out plain and simple. On one side, you have the trader's offer. And let's be honest, it looks like a pretty standard business move. Use cheaper materials, push workers harder, and watch your profits go up. But on the other side is the ethical path she was taught, a path of integrity, safety, and fairness. It was a head-on collision between profit and principle. And her final decision? Well, it wasn't made by looking at a spreadsheet or a profit and loss statement. It was based on empathy. She saw the true human cost of that great deal, written right there on the hands of her workers. And that's where ethics stopped being an idea and became something real, something tangible. Her refusal was an act of protecting those in her care, of recognizing their dignity as something far more valuable than any extra profit.
So what happens when you refuse the easy path? Well, this leads us to one of the most beautiful and profound concepts in Islamic commerce, barakah. It's a kind of success, a kind of growth that you just can't measure in quarterly reports.
Barakah is, simply put, a divine blessing. It's this subtle but powerful increase in goodness that just permeates everything. Your wealth, your time, your efforts. It's the difference between having a lot of money that brings you nothing but stress and having a smaller amount that feels completely abundant and brings you real contentment. Her ethical choice was basically an invitation for barakah to enter her business.
Now, here's the key thing about barakah. It's not instant. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Maryam's ethical decision meant her prices had to be higher, and yeah, at first, business actually slowed down. This is where sabr, or patience, becomes so crucial. True, blessed growth often requires us to go through a period of difficulty, trusting that doing the right thing will eventually lead to the best outcome.
And this timeline shows you exactly how that patience paid off. That initial slowdown, it gave way to something much more powerful, a rock-solid reputation for quality. Slowly, customers began to realize that her cloth, even though it was more expensive up front, was actually a better value because it lasted. In the end, trust became her most valuable asset, and her business didn't just survive, it thrived, filled with barakah.
Her success then brought on a whole new kind of responsibility, leadership. And in Islam, leadership isn't about power or being the boss, it's about service and a deep responsibility for those who are in your charge.
This all comes down to the concept of amana, which means a sacred trust. A business, its money, and especially its people, are an amana from Allah. A leader is more of a guardian than an owner, tasked with protecting and nurturing this trust. Maryam understood that her real job was to grow people, not just production numbers.
And again, you can see how she put this principle into practice every single day. She didn't just hold this value in her heart, she lived it. She invested in her people by training them with care. She built incredible trust by sharing profits transparently. She honored their faith by making sure prayer times were a priority for everyone. And she protected their well-being by flat-out refusing to exploit them for some urgent deadline. That's what leadership as a sacred trust actually looks like.
And this brings us to the climax of her journey, the entrepreneur's final test. The moment where every single one of her principles would be pushed to the absolute limit. I want you to just imagine the scene. An offer comes in that is so massive it could literally change the future of her business overnight. The kind of contract that entrepreneurs dream of. But it came with a catch, a condition that would violate her core principles. To fulfill the order, she would have to cut wages and demand longer hours, compromising the very amana, the very trust she had worked so hard to protect.
And her reflection, it just gets right to the heart of this entire story. She understood that a success that was built on the exhaustion and the exploitation of other people wasn't really success at all. She knew that in the sight of Allah, it would just be an emptiness, a spiritual failure, no matter how much money it brought in. And so, she declined the order.
Maryam's journey teaches us such a powerful lesson. The ultimate measure of value in our work isn't found on a price tag. It's found within our own conscience. The integrity of her craft, the dignity of her people, and her accountability to God, that was her true bottom line.
And so her story leaves us with a question we have to carry into our own lives, into our own work. The next time we're faced with a choice that pits profit against principle, will we have the courage to ask that difficult question, who really pays the price for this? Or will we just choose the comfort of looking away?
Ultimately, Maryam's story is a beautiful reminder that enterprise in Islam has a much higher calling. It's not just about commerce, it's about character. It's about protecting the dignity of every single person involved in the process, one ethical choice, one stitch at a time.
Presented and created by Norin Studio.